But of course, when we hear the word incest, the first thing we typically think about is some sort of sexual immorality and abuse. And while emotional incest may not involve the former, it is definitely a type of abuse. A relationship in which a child is expected to assume the role of the parent's partner is what's known as emotional or covert incest. It occurs between a parent or primary caregiver and their child. Being emotionally dependent, the parent anticipates that their kid will replace whatever needs to be fulfilled in their life. And because of this unwarranted emotional intimacy, the parent treats the child like a romantic partner and may depend on them for things such as emotional support or comfort, advice relating to personal issues, or just having someone that they can rely on to have intimate conversation. Sometimes the adult in this scenario isn't even aware of the consequences of their actions, let alone that they're pressuring the child to take on the role as their emotional partner. The majority of kids raised in these circumstances don't even realize until much later on in life that they were used as a partner proxy for the person or persons that they were raised by. It's also understood that emotional incest will sometimes overlap with enmeshment and emotional parentification. Enmeshments where personal boundaries within the family or groups of people, two or more, are just non-existent, unclear, and or permeable. In this case, the extreme intimacy may make it difficult for each individual person within this familiar group to identify and meet their own needs. And emotional parentification is where the child's forced to take on the emotional burden that should otherwise be taken by their parent or guardian or whoever it is that's raising the child in these situations. The primary reason is that the parent is not receiving enough emotional support from their spouse or a romantic partner. Unfortunately, the child's proximity to the unsatisfactory parent serves as their emotional outlet. Furthermore, some parents are just blind to the problem with the pattern since they themselves could have fallen victim to similar emotional incest in their own childhood. The parent's need for emotional support could come about due to a number of things. It's all different for different individuals. Uh, they could have gone through a divorce or separation. There was infidelity in their relationship. Their partner may not be emotionally available to them. There could be domestic violence. They could have experienced some sort of trauma, have a fear of being left or abandoned. We see this a lot with mothers who have sons, where they have been left by their male partner, and now they allow their sons to become the man of the house. Or we'll see parents who've experienced the death of a partner, and this one we see a lot with fathers and their daughters, where they lose their spouse or partner, and then they put their daughters in the position to take on all of the domestic duties around the house, to include taking care of their own emotional needs. Or maybe the parent just has some sort of personality disorder. Like I said before, the causes of emotional incest can come from many different things depending on the situation of the people involved. Some of those signs, as is the case with all abuse types, there's no one right way to describe the symptoms of emotional incest. Although they vary from person to person, some typical indicators from the parental figures are the same. For instance, they will talk to their children about their intimate or sexual experiences. They're jealous whenever their child forms a strong emotional connection with other people, especially when their children are a little older and start to form romantic relationships of their own with a partner. They will show a lot of jealousy over that. They expect their children to take on the duties of making important financial decisions and other important essential aspects of running the household. They constantly use their children as the individual who they turn to whenever they need to vent their frustrations, invading their child's privacy or being upset when their child doesn't come directly to them uh, with their own private matters. They will make sexually inappropriate comments to or about their children. On the other hand, a child who is a victim of emotional incest might feel responsible for their parents' emotional well being. They will spend more time with the parents rather than spending time with their peers and friends or people their own age. They ignore their own needs while prioritizing those of the parent. These children have a lot of love hate feelings towards their parents. So the symptoms, they vary from situation to situation. We spoke about some of the causes. Now let's get into the effects of emotional incest. It's obvious that emotional incest is harmful, particularly for the children supporting the parents emotionally. But we need to keep in mind that the same circumstances can have various effects on different people. Still, there are some typical outcomes, and those include depression, anxiety, uh, people pleasing behaviors, difficulties cultivating and maintaining intimate relationships with others, or difficulties with establishing and maintaining a personal identity that is completely separate from the parents. All of these effects are rooted in the fact that the child becomes so used to being an emotional anchor, and they feel like that is somehow their sole responsibility. When those around them are not in good emotional states, they take on that responsibility to improve the emotional state of other people, hence the people pleasing behaviors. That will lead us to our favorite part of the discussion, and that is, what can people do to recover from emotional incest? Often, people who have been victims of emotional incest don't realize what's happened to them. However, for some, when they do become adults and start working towards improving themselves, they might realize that some of the issues that they're facing are rooted in emotional incest that they experienced while growing up. And thankfully, there are a lot of interventions that one could adopt. And this includes talk therapy, which is typically the first step for most people, as it's how they learn how their childhood experiences may have influenced the people they grew up to become. It can also help one get a better understanding of what happened in their past so that it doesn't negatively impact them as they continue to grow and go through their healing process. The second will be to practice setting boundaries, because when we're younger, our boundaries were constantly ignored. You might grow up to be someone who just can't say no. Learning to set boundaries will slowly help you to take charge of your life and the decisions that you make that are beneficial to you. Number three, interact with people who have similar experiences. It may not be easy to find such people, but if it's possible, it can be very beneficial. Hearing about other people's experiences will remind you that you're not alone, and it will also help you to get more tips on how other people have recovered from their experiences. That way you may be able to implement those those techniques in your own life. And last but not least, journaling. This will help you keep track of your thoughts and feelings. It's a great way to observe any changes that you might be experiencing regarding how you interact with other people. However, these tips aren't a magic wand that's going to completely erase everything that's happened in your past. With consistency, they can help you experience less of all of the negative effects that we spoke about before. If you have experienced or suffered emotional incest, the one thing that you need to keep in mind is that it was not your fault. You might find yourself naturally taking the blame and wishing that you could have done something different. But the truth of the matter is that those experiences were far beyond your control and out of your reach to do anything to change the situation. You can't go back and change things that have happened in your past, but you can definitely be sure that you can change how those past events have impacted your life so that you don't make those same mistakes in the future with your friends or your children or anyone else who is dependent upon you to help them in their growth process.